always a big push to make their meters do everything for them.
Red light, green light.
Exactly.
Opposite from my dad, it's like, oh, I don't use AI at all. And I'm like, but you do. You are the algorithm.
Oh, you're just not being creative enough. People are going to find ways to use AI for the porn
Sure they already
industry or already are.
And it will be problematic for ISPs who have to protect consumers.
Maybe.
All right, gentlemen, the million-dollar question of the hour is, will AI adoption increase bandwidth consumption or just shift it? Larry, let's start with you.
It could definitely increase it. I mean, we all know bandwidth consumption is on this straight up path. I saw a Sandvine report. They said, we've seen 20 to 30% bandwidth growth for the last 20 years. They're expecting it to be 40% with AI. And I think most of it comes down to, we're going to be passing around a lot of data to train. Training these models is not inexpensive, and we're all getting that capability ourselves. So it used to be, you just got trained models and asked them questions. Now we're all going to start feeding these models, and when you do that, that's going to cause a pretty big increase. Plus, then we're all going to start getting the responses back from them, which, as we start asking them more and more detailed questions, is going to, add to that usage.
Add to that memory load.
Yep.
With what they're learning. Rick, what do you think?
Well, it's definitely not going to decrease it. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, yes, some people that are really fanatics, they might get into running their own models and doing things locally. But to Larry's point, that doesn't even help you either. But I think that it's the big. I mean, it's more than a buzzword. This is absolutely the next frontier, but it is becoming more and more commonplace. So just organic usage adoption, the people using AI today that's not the quantity that's going to be using it tomorrow and the day after. So I think
continues to increase exponentially.
Yep, it's an exponential curve that we're looking at here for that reason alone.
Paul?
I can't disagree, but I do think the technology will change over time. I wouldn't be surprised if we find a way to compress or do something with that traffic, that maybe some sort of AI language that makes it less bandwidth hog, right? Less of a bandwidth hog. I think that could be a possibility, but
not necessarily a hockey stick of growth.
Well, it's going to, and then people are going to freak out a little bit, I have a feeling. So there'll be some push to come up with a different way. Or the ISPs, the big ones at least, are just going to really push for, we're going to, charge you for the bandwidth you're using. So if you're using more, they're going to get more money to subsidize the extra bandwidth on the back end to support it. So I think it'll change.
Do you think so? I mean, the big ISPs aren't charging for bandwidth these days.
I saw Comcast has tried to do it, and they still do it down in some of the Texas markets. Charter does it. It just doesn't go over that well. I think this gives them an excuse to actually do it, right? If we really see this, and you go back to Netflix, I know we'll talk to that later, but if this really pushes up bandwidth, it's a perfect opportunity for them to roll out these new agreements so that they can make sure everybody has enough bandwidth so AI can help everybody.
That would be quite the shift.
They can try. I think
they will try.
Yeah.
Maybe.
They were always looking for ways to make more money.
I don't disagree with that. We started out without unlimited bandwidth, but we ended up, we just had to. I mean, that wasn't an option to have capped plans at some point, and the pushback was so hard on capped plans. I think.
I mean, they could take the mobile model, right, where they say it's unlimited, but once you reach this spot, it gets much
throttle you down.
That I really believe will happen.
But then that portends that they have another option where you're paying by.
That's
right.
True.
Could be at least.
Yeah, I could see that model being viable.
This could absolutely turn into a net neutrality conversation as well, right? Because you could treat the normal internet one way, and you could treat AI traffic another way, and you could have unlimited regular, and you could cap. Maybe there will be special provisions if the load on the infrastructure gets to a point where something has to give. I think that's another hypothetical.
So,
and people are already putting paper to pencil to figure this out, right? Or they're feeding it into the chat GPT.
Yeah, the AI will sort this out itself, I'm sure.
It's going to self-regulate.
Hang on, we can just ask and we'll get the answer in a few minutes.
Net neutrality, is that something that is codified up in Canada? I know they kept trying to do it here. It never stuck.
Yeah, it's complicated for
but
sure.
There is something there. I'm just curious.
Like every good relationship, it's
Yeah,
complicated.
it's complicated. It is you're allowed to do traffic shaping if you disclose it.
Yeah.
But there are obviously there's pushback against that. I think it's a good thing or a bad thing, depending who you are and how you look at it. Again, I think when preparing for this topic, there's such a natural parallel to Netflix.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Right. And again, it can be a dirty thing in terms of traffic shaping, right? It can be a detriment to the consumer, but it also can be a very beneficial thing. And I think that when we're looking at some smaller operators, if you have a wireless network, for example, you don't have as much capacity as even from a transport and a backbone, but right on the transport level as well, from the tower to the home, you don't have as much bandwidth. So a well thought out traffic shaping approach can make the user experience better. You're prioritizing what needs to be prioritized, and you're deprioritizing the things that you wouldn't notice. So I think that again, I know this isn't about net neutrality, but again, I want to qualify that comment by saying it wouldn't necessarily be some dirty thing if you have fixed resources. That could be a way to make sure that you're keeping the lights on and the high availability things are still performant, but then you're not altogether blocking things. And I think that's sometimes what people picture when you're talking about net neutrality is, blocking things. And that's not necessarily it.
I think that's a great segue, though, into my next question, which is what will a smart AI-ready ISP look like in 3 years?
I think
I don't even think it's 3 years. I think it's next year.
I think traffic shaping fits into that really nicely. If it can identify the traffic type, it can then identify how much it's going to need and make that tunnel specifically, if you like, but make it specifically for that service at that moment and then let it go. And when there's something else that comes in, it can do it at a speed that we can't do. I think that's probably a viable option.
Yeah, self-healing networks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that's from the network, definitely. I think, you have to get your network scaled, ready for this AI stuff. But one of the other things that it's not just scale. Latency is going to become huge as well. So you've got these real-time applications where, you're going to try and do customer support via AI. You can't have these huge delays.
Right.
So you do edge, right? Where you put it on the edge to reduce that.
Right.
Kind of thing,
So you really need the latency to come down as well, I think, for us to be successful.
Well, I think that like ChatGPT, if you're trying to process something, it tells you, hold on a moment, there's lots of people trying to do things like this right now. Let us send you an alert when your information is ready. I think that's going to be more and more common, that even operators are going to have to say, we're getting it to you. It's just going to take a minute.
Do you think customers are going to put up with that?
They're not going to like
it. I don't think so either. And I think there are ways to overcome that. If you're going to really build this into your customer support infrastructure, you can't be there. There's no way. The first time I was on the phone and it told me to do that, I would hang up and find out who the next ISP I was going to be using would be. In all honesty, and in 3 years from now, that question just seemed like an eternity. If you're not doing something right now, at least exploring what you're going to do AI and starting to really build this in, you're going to be in a sad shape 3 years from now, because all the companies that are going to surpass you.
What do you think about the idea of offering ChatGPT or a wrapper of it or an equivalent service as a service in your offering? Because if you did that, you could have it local, and then you wouldn't have to be transporting it all over the place, and you could really control the experience. If it becomes commonplace, as common as having a Spotify subscription that people are paying for services like ChatGPT, maybe the ISP can take that and make that a revenue stream.
So we go from selling email addresses back in the day to selling a GPT for the company.
ISP AI.
ISP AI. Your trademark right now.
Someone grab that domain quick.
I don't know if a lot of the ISPs have the infrastructure or the network,
NVIDIA cards.
They can't get their hands on the NVIDIA cards for one to do all that processing locally. And if you start offering that scale, you're going to need some really serious.
Oh, it would be a whole thing.
Yeah, right.
Get me wrong. But if we're just sitting here, hypothesizing, that's one crazy way you could at least get some more control and you could turn it into a revenue stream. I wouldn't offer it to anyone other than my customers. So then is it worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Paul, any closing thoughts on what an AI-ready ISP is going to look like down the line?
Yeah, I think that the Genic, right, where they're creating the different agents and creating layers.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be this, the obvious ones, customer support, right? I also think there'll be the network management piece because that's always been a pain point, right? Being able to adjust things when you need it, where you need it, that can be difficult.
If then.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do think that's going to continue to grow. I just think there are things we're not thinking of, and there's going to be so much that right now we're just like, what? They can do that?
Yeah.
Because you get a bit of that right now just using the generative AI, but there's going to be a lot of things that really will be AI driven, but it's not really going to be a talking agent. It's making decisions in real time about whatever situation it needs to.
Right. Or it's doing it in the background and you're not even aware that it's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
That also is going to drive traffic up big time.
Well, let's talk about that. How is AI going to change support expectations? Some of it's going to be diagnostic. Some of it's going to be chatbots, which we're already seeing chatbots on customers' websites and things like that. But how is AI going to change the expectations of the end user with their ISP experience?
The demand for real-time answers is going to only increase. I think just that is maybe a generational thing as much as it's a technology thing, but you will solve that through technology. The expectations are going to come in and you have to deliver against those. This is a great way to solve for getting those real-time answers, but you have to maintain that infrastructure and you have to make sure that the answers that it's giving are the answers that are real.
They're not hallucinated?
Right.
Because that'll be problematic. What do you think, Larry?
It's super important. But the training data is going to be critical, and that's where I think people really need to start focusing. AI is just what you feed it is what it knows. So if you're not feeding it good information, and you're not feeding it your network infrastructure and how they interact and stuff like that.
So, do you think an ISP could take all the data that's coming across their network and use that data to train the AI? Could they do it without permission from the end users? I think that's another viable use, right? You can create a lot of information about your area, about the people, and you can be predictive on what they're going to buy, where they're going to go, and you can sell that. And it would be, it's scary, but I think that's going to happen.
From our last episode that came home every day at 4:00
Yeah.
and turned on his radio.
It's not scary. It's reality. We're harvesting data everywhere. I mean, anytime you type anything in, I guarantee someone's collecting that somewhere and using it to model you.
Just with the cookies, it just will go to another level. I have a feeling.
Right. It
with
just
the ubiquity.
Take it to another level. But on the network operations side, which we started talking about and we can get into further in another episode, right, that's going to be a huge use of AI. I mean, because it can analyze that stuff way faster than your best network engineer can.
It's fascinating to me. Are we concerned that AI generated video and the real-time apps are going to overwhelm the current infrastructures that our operators have across the globe?
As in, there'll be more video out there than there is now, say YouTube or TikTok. I'm not sure it will.
Because it's not just us generating it. We're actually having the computers generate videos.
So you think there'll be more of it?
Exactly, more content.
I think there could be, but I'm not sure it'll really drive more. I'm not sure about that because I think there's a lot of it right now, and it continues to grow. I guess it could make it happen faster, right? Okay. But I'm not sure it would.
Interesting.
will we see standards of upscaling? Is 8K going to be the new norm? I mean, again, these exponential impacts have material impacts on the networks themselves. So I think that is a real possibility.
We were talking the other day about how Princess Leia from Star Wars, the hologram of her. Is there going to become a time where you are sitting in a conference room and nobody's actually in the conference room, but you have this feel, this vibe that's not so far-fetched any longer, because you really are seeing, the capabilities of what AI can do on photo restoration and colorization and things like that. And, now you're seeing photographs actually be brought to life, and your great grandfather is smiling in an image. It's a little creepy, I'm not going to lie. But all those things take up more data, and they take up more infrastructure.
Right. What's the data density of transporting a four-dimensional image?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is something I just thought of. Could ISPs start inserting into the data streams advertising? Like when I watch YouTube TV, I notice when I'm watching, the playoffs or any basketball game, they are overlaying their own advertising within that game. That's obviously theirs, and it's gotten better and better.
And it's local.
And it's done by Google. So they sold this ad inside of the inside of the video stream. I'm thinking with the right tools, you could do that with any data stream. And as with AI, you could shape it and sell it and make it specific, right? And it just fits right in there and looks like it's a part of it without the permission of, say, the person that generated that content.
Right. Or if someone already paid for an ad and you're overlaying over that ad.
Yeah.
So I think the legal ramifications of what you're describing are wild.
I noticed it also in the World Series. Behind them, there'd be these things. And I'm like, well, that's not really there.
Right.
But I tell you, over the last couple of years, it's harder and harder to tell.
So what's on the wall, what's not on the
exactly.
What's chasing up and down the pitch.
So you might be able to do it and not get caught and make some money.
What about the other direction? What about selling it as an ad blocker? I can dynamically block
I'd like that.
every ad and just paint over
Do
it. Yeah. You could paint over it. There is nothing there. It's the background filled in.
I like that.
There's an idea. And again, it's the same sort of issue where you are not ultimately delivering that to the end viewer, even though it's been paid for.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, great when we start inserting the ads in there and we're using AI to train AI. Because, I mean, I've done that. I've asked AI, get the response, and I feed it right back into itself with another prompt. Hopefully it can catch those ads and that doesn't start to mold the answers. It starts to give, oh yeah, you really do need to go out and buy this router. And that will help your whole.
Oh, that's scary, right?
But that to that point, it's why we have to treat AI as we are the ringleaders. We're the ones that have to take the responses and make sure we're reading it, validating it, making sure that we understand what that response has come back to. We've got personal responsibility as this technology continues to grow.
Right. I use the term like human circuit breaker. We really, you need to have that with your AI stuff, especially as you're going forward. You need some controls in place to know that it's not going off the rails, and every customer support call coming in is getting hallucinated, to the wrong answer. And because that is not going to do the ISP well.
And what about bad actors? Could it be that your competition is feeding erroneous information about your business into these models?
Absolutely. Training.
Yeah.
Training it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And how do you overcome that?
Kung Fu.
Kung Fu fighting. 100%. Do y'all think that AI is going to force ISPs to accelerate their fiber deployments?
It might compound what's already happening, but I don't think that's going to be the main material change.
Because what do you think, Larry, in terms of
I don't
technology?
Think so. Nah, I mean, it's going to increase your bandwidth consumption. We've already all agreed on that. So you're going to have to get the technology in place to handle that. Is that going to be the driving reason for upgrading your fiber technology faster? I don't think so.
There's already such a need for bandwidth. I think if that was a viable delivery method, it would have been selected already. I think generally, if you're using an alternative to fiber, it's because it's not justifiable financially or logistically to deliver it in that area.
Well, and to Paul's point earlier, just because this is the model we have right now doesn't mean that it's the model we're going to have 18 months from now or 3 years from now. And they're always going to try and tweak and fine tune and refine the delivery method for the systems. To your knowledge, are ISPs already seeing changes in traffic patterns due to the AI tools that are being run?
Not that I've heard. I don't think it's as visible on the traffic side as like when streaming video became ubiquitous. I mean, that literally brought networks to their knees.
So let's talk about Netflix. Let's talk about video streaming and some mistakes that were made early on, because I think that ISPs need to be thinking about how they're going to not make the wrong decision and be on the wrong side of history on these cases.
Yeah, I have a story that immediately comes to mind for that. So there's a trade show, Wispapalooza. We're all pretty familiar with that one. And there was this was in the early days of Netflix, and I believe that was the core topic of one of the sessions. And there was a panelist that was very proudly telling everyone how he had a method to identify the abusers on his network. And these abusers, what qualified an abuser, they were just Netflix customers using their internet connection to stream Netflix. And he was basically eradicating them from his network. He was firing them, and he was going through and getting rid of them. I mean, it sounds insane now, but it already was a little bit of a wild thing. But, I'm sure that he was not alone. And I think that just comes out of fear, where what you were planning for a certain trajectory of growth. And, basically with the advent of having to deliver these services, and of course they didn't get a single penny for it, adding one customer was now the equivalent of adding like 20 from 6 months ago.
From usage perspective.
So they were scared, and it's like, what do I do? But it's like stopping a moving train. Of course, you can't stop streaming media, and I'm sure eventually he figured that out. And I think that would be my same cautionary tale. It may not be as much of a black and white sort of visible shift, but I think that if you take that attitude of well, this isn't something that I have to go out of my way to platform and to deliver and to prioritize for my customers, you're going to end up in a similar place.
I can see what his thought process was, though. Oh, I've got a couple of heavy users. Let me get them out of the way so I can take care of the rest of my customers. But the fact of the matter is that genie was already out of the bottle. Video streaming.
That was always a part of acceptable use policies, right? If you're abusing the network and the bandwidth and affecting people around you,
right,
we can shut you off. Net neutrality, I want to come back to that, because this is exactly when I remember this going down, and I was in a lot of meetings about the impact that Netflix was having on the network. The way that some of the bigger providers solved it was they charged Netflix and prioritized their traffic and reduced priority on some other ones, hence the net neutrality.
Right.
And they were getting paid by the customer. Netflix is getting paid by the customers. The provider was
the dark side.
So they wanted to make sure they were getting a slice for everything. And that was really when that net neutrality came in. Because first Netflix was like, oh no, you can't do that. And then they went, oh yeah, Netflix went, let's do that. Right? We're making enough money. Sure, let's make our traffic the most important traffic out there. So I think that could happen with AI as well. You take those biggest ones that are using the most bandwidth and say, hey, you got to pay us to have this priority on the network. Unless true neutrality happens, I suspect that will come up again.
That's fascinating.
I think we're still in the pre-Netflix days for AI.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't hit that problem yet. That's still coming, and you should be ready for it.
Time is now.
But ISPs have really learned to, your infrastructure just keeps expanding. I mean, from T1 to 10 gig was our journey. So it definitely is got to be addressed, but we haven't seen it yet. So with customers noticing the impact, they haven't noticed it yet, but it's coming, and they all better be ready for it.
And there's going to be slow adopters. People are going to be like, oh, I don't really understand that, so I'm not going to use it. And then all of a sudden, oh, but It's like that old Fabergé commercial, and she told two friends, and she told two friends, and all of a sudden the adoption just grows exponentially. And if you're not already thinking about how to grow, how to meet that demand, people are going to have problems.
And that's just choosing to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the second wave is going to be, a lot of things that you're using and you don't realize that it's being powered by AI, or that your data is being shuffled in different ways. These are going to be invisible forces, so you don't even necessarily need to be an adopter to be generating that traffic.
Right.
Yeah, that is probably going to be the one that drives it the most.
Mm-hmm.
Behind the scenes.
Yep. Data has always been the most valuable commodity, and this is going to just supercharge what that means to companies and how far they're going to be willing to go to surface that data.
And we've all already been touched by it. It's like, if I think about going to Disney World, my feed and my Facebook, completely shifts. Or, oh man, I just opened up the checkbook. It was, how do you know that I'm going? Oh yeah.
Did you say checkbook?
Stop.
I'm not sure a lot of people aren't going to know what that is.
Fair enough.
Wait till it makes the vacation request for you and books the hotel.
Right. Change is the only constant, right? What that it would only put in the vacation request for me and book the hotel. Yes, it's time.
It will.
All right, gentlemen. So as we wrap up this segment, what are your final thoughts about how ISPs should think about AI and the future of their operations? Paul, we're going to start with you.
Well, they have to consider it, right? And they have to do it now, or they're going to get left behind in a year or two, right? They just have to do that, stay up to date on it, and understand the impact it's having on their business so that they can react to it or be proactive would really be the best way. But we don't really know how it's going to change. So right now it's probably more reactive than proactive.
AI forward is that concept.
Yeah, I was also thinking maybe AI could just tell them what's going to happen and then they can prepare for it.
It's not a bad place to start. Larry, what do you think?
I think they need to be looking at how they can implement those tools right now. Even the smaller guys can use this from a customer support perspective. They can use it to start, training their knowledge. They need to really focus on making sure they have their knowledge, not that it's all just tribal head knowledge that hasn't been put down somewhere, because, AI, at least right now, isn't extracting that from my brain. And then like network operations and bandwidth, it is going to increase their bandwidth, and they've gotten used to it, but it's going to be that next tier. So be prepared for it and be ready for it. Don't get left behind.
Bring us home, Rick.
Yeah, I think there's two main kind of facets that we've been bouncing between here, and that is how it impacts the ISP from the perspective of their customers using AI and the material impact that may have on traffic, and then how the ISP themselves should be using AI. And I think Larry is absolutely correct. We may not necessarily understand what that impact is going to look like. So I think you kind of have to be ready on the bandwidth side, on the network side. But if you aren't already seriously looking into and adopting and using AI tools in the day-to-day of your business, you're already being left behind, unfortunately.
The AI era is coming fast, and Sonar helps ISPs prepare with automation, visibility, and control across your network. If you're rethinking your stack and looking for an AI-forward company, start with sonar.software. All right, let's get back into it.
All right, let's move into our next segment, which is Love It or Hate It. And I'm going to read a hot take on AI and broadband, and you tell me where you stand. So we're going to start with smaller ISPs won't be able to keep up with the AI wave. Larry, what do you think? Love it or hate it?
Hate it. I mean, smaller ISPs are going to be able to compete in this business. They will have a lot of the same technologies available to them that the bigger ISPs. They just need to, start using them. Start using them right today. So I hate it. I think they clearly.
Would it be cost prohibitive for them to be able to utilize this technology that way? I mean, the bigger ones, big pockets, and they're already using it and have been.
Right.
So is that really going to stop them from being able to compete if they don't really have the funds? And it could even be a leverage used by the bigger ones, right? I've seen this before where you create an organization and people decide on standards, and it's set by the biggest ones, and then that pushes down the other people out.
Yeah, but the bigger ones have been trying to do that all along. They've tried to do that to the ISP industry the entire time we've existed, and they aren't successful because we find ways as the smaller ISPs to make this technology work. So it's going to work.
I think
And they can do it.
there's a much higher likelihood that it's going to level the playing field. I think there's so many opportunities where you can use it as an accelerator, and you can use it as a differentiator, and you can use it in creative ways. You don't need big teams. You can, especially with some of the more complex models, and you can really, if you know what you're doing, it's like having a specialized team to do X, Y, Z. I mean, it's not even just the stuff that is customer facing. If you can't afford to have a professional marketing agency, you can have marketing plans. You can have social media calendars. It can do the posts. It can make the posts. This is leveling the playing field in ways that I think will offset any potential of it kind of going in the other direction, like you're saying, personally.
Well, I hate it too, but just so you know. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Rick, right? That's really what's going to happen, I believe. They'll use it. And I know I said it could be expensive, but it also depends on how they use it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my last love it or hate it for this segment is AI will help ISPs, not hurt them. Not hurt them. Is there a world in which AI does hurt operators?
Well, what I was talking about there, where it can be used to leverage them if they, how we need to create an organization and standards by which we utilize this in the ISP industry. And that's developed by, let's say, the big three, the big four in the US. And then they set those standards and push the other ones down, right? So
it makes it more difficult to adopt and execute in smaller spaces. Rick, what do you think?
I think in terms of looking at the map and, you are here, we are in the fear of the unknown era, right? We know that this isn't going away. We know this is going to change the world. We don't know exactly in what ways. And I think that could potentially hurt you in the sense that it could throw you off your game. You might have a good thing going. You might have a blueprint of how you were planning on growing your business. And it could kind of throw all that for a loop, especially when there is a lot of marketing around it. And if this isn't something that you are embracing and you don't know how to play into that, you're going to be differentiated in the market for the wrong reasons. And I don't know if anyone, or if everyone rather, is going to know what to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the tools at your fingertips, but you still have to run your business. You still have to have the day-to-day operations. How do you leverage the tools that are available? And will that hurt them? Larry, what do you think? Will AI help ISPs, not hurt them?
I mean, there are going to be places it's going to hurt them. I mean, look at spam. We've already seen AI being used in spam. It is just getting that much smarter, that much harder to detect, and that affects you as the ISP. You're supporting these customers who are now being targeted. What happens when you get these smart denial of service attacks that
just
are going to start targeting things very specifically and ever changing in ways that make it so much harder to detect and to stop. So there are definitely going to be hurts caused by AI. I don't think they're going to outweigh the helps.
Benefits.
So, but they need to be aware of the hurts. You can't just throw on the rose-colored glasses and say, this is going to just take me to Nirvana. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it isn't going to do that by itself. And, you have to be careful with your training data. Garbage in, garbage out. So that could be another hurt.
And I think it's also going to be a generational issue. I mean, Rick, you've got young kids and they're already using AI
absolutely
for schoolwork and things like that, and learning how to use it in an appropriate way, not just I don't have to think any longer, but how to use it actually to think better, to be more cognitive in what they're doing.
Right. And I think for myself, I'm happy that they have taken an interest in it, and I am doing my best to encourage them to use it in the right ways. But you know what it's like with kids, right? If you are too firm about something, they're just going to run in the opposite direction. So, there's a lot of good kind of parables and news stories out there. And, I think I like to show them examples of when you don't validate your outputs, or whatever the case may be, kind of how that can go wrong in practice. And it's amazing. I mean, that's always the thing with kids in technology, like how adept they are, how quickly they pick it up, and that is going to be really interesting for us, that there was a time before and now it's during. There's going to be kids that kind of like, with my kids, I was like, wow, they grew up and all they knew was the internet. This next generation isn't going to know the world before AI, and that is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, which is total opposite from my dad. It's like, oh, I don't use AI at all. And I'm like, but you do. That
Yes.
suggested for you is all about AI, buddy.
Yep.
You are the algorithm.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That was fantastic.
I wanted to bring up pornography, but it didn't feel applicable. I mean, pornography drove video cassettes. It drove the internet. Not kidding, right?
All right.
So is it really going to drive AI?
Will tradition continue?
Yeah. Throughout time, right? Think about video cassettes when they came out as a beta versus VHS. Well, the porn industry went with VHS, and that's what's won, because the consumers wanted that content.
Mm-hmm.
Content is king, right? And it also helped drive the internet. It drove traffic on the internet. It drove adoption again, because now instead of getting a VCR tape and putting it in, you can get it whenever you want it on demand. Right? And truly, it doesn't necessarily cost more, right? So is the same thing going to happen with pornography? I don't see how, but could it? The same thing happen where pornography drives adoption and then brings that into the infrastructure for the ISP?
Oh, you're just not being creative enough. People are going to find ways to use AI for the porn industry, or already are.
And it will be problematic for ISPs who have to protect consumers.
Maybe.
You took your head at me.
No, I was actually somewhere else. I apologize. I was thinking about Idiocracy.
What were you thinking about, Paul?
Idiocracy. You guys know the movie Idiocracy?
Yes.
Right? Where everybody's intelligence keeps going down because everything's explained and provided for them.
And mankind became stupider at a frightening rate.
And they don't validate or try to understand or critically think about things. And it feeds into itself and creates a gap between reality. I think we could easily get there. And when it applies to ISPs, I think about technicians, because that was where a lot of my thoughts were growing up, if you like. I can remember there was always a big push to make their meters do everything for them, right? Where they didn't necessarily need to understand the math behind the levels and how it impacted the service.
Red light, green light.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right? So did they really learn what they needed to learn when this is a red light and it says what it is and none of those work? Or they're just wrong, right?
It's a Pavlovian response, not actual knowledge.
It could end up happening, and it can be hidden because it could play on percentages. There'll be a percentage of it that works and people will buy into that and keep growing that gap in knowledge and that validation until some point we're using AI to validate AI and we end up with junk and we're watering our fields with Gatorade. Because it's got electrolytes.
It's what the plants crave.
Right. That's what I was thinking about when you asked. Sorry. I was
If this conversation is making you think differently about the future of broadband, make sure to leave us a quick rating on Spotify. Just search bandwidth, tap the 3 horizontal dots, then rate the show. It helps us out a ton, and it will help get the show in front of more ISP leaders like you. All right, let's get back into it.
All right, gentlemen, it's time to play What If? This may sound a little wild in a scenario, but in a few years, they might be a reality. So let's speculate a little bit. What if your competitor starts advertising AI-ready infrastructure and you're not? Larry, I'm going to start with you.
I don't think this is a what if. I mean, this is already happening. We're seeing this in everything. People are just slapping on the AI label. So I would say the what if is don't panic. What do they really have? Because everybody is AI this, AI that. And you better be getting AI this and AI that. I'm not saying you need to be able to slap this label on at some point as well. But make sure you got meat behind it. Right now, most of the AI doesn't have the meat behind it.
Doesn't have the bones.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's complete bullshit, right? It's just throwing something on there that means nothing. I could say I'm ready to do whatever. I'm ready to fly to the moon. We're ready to fly to the moon infrastructure. What? It's just BS.
Right. We are the best ISP.
Right. Well, how are you measuring that?
I asked my mom.
It's not pretty good, but I just think it's BS, right? Now, And right now, I don't think it's going to drive much activity, to be honest. I don't think someone's going to go to an ISP.
Go out of
because
their
they
way.
said we are AI ready. Yeah, okay. That's great. Good for you.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It's a completely unregulated term, and until that there actually is some governance around what that means, it's nonsense. It makes me think of food labeling, like, all natural or like lightly sweetened. These are unregulated terminologies.
This is carbon, this is a sugar, but wait, they're both really sugars.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's marketing.
Yeah.
AI ready is marketing, and the question is, do the consumers care?
Do the consumers care? That is a fantastic point, Rick. Absolutely. And I do think that people watching this episode will think about their consumers and their own consumption of artificial intelligence for their ISPs and beyond.
I think one of the best ways to answer that question is, are they being asked that by their customers? Are there customers that are, calling them up and saying, are you AI ready? If no one's asked you that, don't waste any advertising dollars on it.
They're doing it on their phones anyway.
But you are going to have to be AI ready. I mean, you are going to have to be
Oh, yeah.
an AI infrastructure at some point.
But I don't know if
But nobody's asking.
Yeah.
if your competitor's marketing that,
Right.
is that going to materially change your business? I don't know.
No, not at this
I
point.
don't think so.
Not at all.
Don't get distracted by the shiny object.
Keep focus.
Keep focused, stay the course, and keep your eyes open. Gentlemen, let's wrap this up. And if you had one final thought to share with ISPs, with an operator you're breaking bread with at a dinner table, what would you tell them about AI and their future? Rick, let's start with you.
I think someone said it earlier, don't panic. I think that really is probably the place to start.
You totally stole that from Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
It's like,
Go back to
yes,
you first.
You started with me. What am I supposed to do? But I will tie it back to the AI ready thing. I think you should be panic ready.
Panic ready?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
Paul, I'll let you go next and say,
What I was saying is that you don't have to panic, but you do have to be ready, right? So there is a sense of urgency here, and don't just let it go by the side because it's a fad, because it isn't.
Yeah, it's not just going to go away, is it?
Mm.
Larry?
Yeah, take one area of your business right now and start focusing on where you can make AI. It's going to be the 10x. That's what it's going to do. It's going to not take away people. It's going to make us much more productive people, and find where that is. And I would think a good place to start is your network infrastructure and your monitoring, because you'll get a lot of benefits when you get that rolling with an AI solution.
And I think we're going to talk about that in a future episode, right?
We might.
We might. Hey.
AI is exciting, but let's not forget that some of the wildest challenges ISPs face still happen in the field. In our next episode, we're talking about the most unbelievable real-world stories from our time in the trenches. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, because you're not going to want to miss this one.
Remember, when you connect communities, you unlock what's possible. Until next time.